Hello and welcome to another quick video from me, the History Tutor. In this one we're tutoring you on how to get a really good mark on an AQA Describe question about Kaiser Wilhelm's Germany. So in this video I'm going to be helping you with the AQA topic of Germany 1890 to 1945. I'm focusing on the first topic of Kaiser Wilhelm's Germany and looking at the problems he faced. We're going to look at a describe question. So in preparation for this, do have a look at my talk through videos or my revision videos, or read the page in my revision guide, ready to complete a quick quiz and then to answer the question in detail. So now let's go over to a quiz. Okay, so here's 10 quick questions. Have a look through them. Have a look through your revision guide and your notes and see which ones you can answer. If you've got my revision guide, you can fill them in on the page there. Now, pause me and give it a go. Okay, you've got your answers ready? Okay, so let's go through them. So, out of which war was Germany created in 1871? So that's the Franco-Prussian War. So it's worth remembering Germany did not exist before 1871. It was a collection of small states that was then united by a series of wars, the last one being the Franco-Prussian War. And because Prussia was the dominant nation there in Germany, a lot of what was created about Germany was dominated by the Prussian state. So when did Kaiser Wilhelm become Kaiser? Well, 1888. Our course begins 1890. So Kaiser Wilhelm II is the leader of Germany. His father, Kaiser Wilhelm I, was the leader before. He was the first emperor of Germany. And the word Kaiser does mean emperor. So feels like he's the emperor of all these German states. What's the name of the German parliament? So that's the Reichstag, and you should know that the Reichstag was a discussion group. It was a bunch of political parties all elected, but they couldn't create laws. They discussed and amended laws that the Kaiser decided upon. So what was the local government of Germany called? The Bundesrat. We need to remember Germany is also a federal system. That means each state, these old states that formed Germany, each of them had their own little parliament called a Bundesrat, so they had their own local laws and local ideas. So making the rule of Germany a little bit difficult for the Kaiser, that each state had to be placated and kept happy. What was the German word for world policy known as that? And that's Weltpolitik. So if you want to show off in your exam, use that word for the Kaiser's foreign policy. He wants a big empire. Some of the words he used were like Mittel Africa, for an African empire. He even wanted the same idea as Hitler in the later years, living space towards the east, looking to expand into Poland and Russia, etc. So he was very much having an expansive militaristic foreign policy. What domestic problem did the Kaiser want to distract people from in the early 1900s? So this was in particular the rise of socialism and the demands of the workers. So Germany was a heavily industrialized nation. It had lots of factories and a huge working class. And in the Reichstag, the Socialist Party was one of the largest blocs within the Reichstag, put a lot of pressure on the Kaiser for workers' reforms. So that could be better housing, pensions, health insurance, better conditions of factory, better pay. And so the Kaiser did not want to give all this because he wanted to keep the profits for the rich conservatives and give the money to Germany at the top level and not necessarily for the poor people. Number 7, which event caused tension with Britain before the First World War? And that was the naval race. So the Kaiser was very envious of the British Empire and the British Navy. He was related to the British royal family and so obviously knew all about Empire and also their Navy. And he was keen to rival them. And having a Navy, he thought, could put pressure on Britain to give up colonies and give up Empire. So one of the key things to remember about Empire is that Germany was created in 1871. Most of the world's already been carved up. Africa, most of it's gone. South America, that's already been and done hundreds of years before. North America, done. China, being done. So Germany's missed out on empire. So now if they want empire, then they need to pressurize other countries to give up their empire or go to war. So give an example of German industrial success. So they produced more coal and steel than Britain by 1914. So coal and steel was one of the big ideas of industrialization at this time. Coal for steam and power, steel to make things. So the fact they're producing more than Britain is amazing. Britain was obviously the workshop of the world, the first industrialized nation. So the Socialist Party, named the Socialist Party, they were called the Social Democratic Party, SPD. And what proportion of socialists were there in the Reichstag? So 1/3 of the Reichstag was socialist, so a massive power block that was causing pressure on the Kaiser. Now let's think about a question. So question 4 in the AQA exam is describe question. So describe two ways. This one says, describe 2 ways that Kaiser faced problems in the years 1899-14. So what do you think would be a success criteria for this question? It's a 4-mark question. So have a think about what 4 marks would do. Okay, you've got a space in your revision guide to note a success criteria. So have a think, what do you think would be the main criteria for this question? Pause me and have a go. Okay, so the main things to consider then are obviously for 4 marks, you need to make 2 points as it says there. So 2 ideas. You need to make a point that answers the question. So you need to start with a point about Kaiser Wilhelm's problems. Then you need to back this up with factual evidence and details. So we need to see some keywords, some names, maybe a date in there in the description. 2 or 3 sentences in total for the point and the evidence. And then repeat this process to describe your second point. So relatively simple. So maybe jot down 1 or 2 ideas in a revision guide about how to complete this question correctly. You make a point, you give your evidence, probably going to write about 2 to 3 sentences for each point. You need to obviously repeat the process. Okay, so now let's make a plan for this. So have a think about 2 points you could make. What 2 problems does the Kaiser face? Have a look through revision notes, have a look through the ideas we just talked about in terms of the quiz, and then what evidence could you give to support this point? So pause me and have a think about it now. Okay, here's some ideas then. I've talked about the rise of socialism as being an important point and opposition of the workers. This is one of the big problems the Kaiser faced. So obviously there was a huge amount of socialists in the Reichstag. 1/3 of the Reichstag was socialist. They wanted workers' reforms, which would be very expensive, and it would lead to the conservative rich elite being unhappy with the Kaiser. He might give in to the workers. Also, the second problem is a lack of empire and unhappiness of the conservatives and nationalists. Germany had no empire. They were too late in their development as a nation. Most of the world had been carved up. So they started to develop the naval race and Weltpolitik for an aggressive foreign policy for empire. Okay, so those might be a couple of ideas. You might also have about the difficulty of ruling with the Reichstag and the Bundesrat and the federal system. Okay, those might be really good ideas. Or the fact that maybe the Kaiser is spending too much money on militarism and the navy. So let's have a think about how you answer this question. So as I said earlier, in your success criteria, it's making a point and giving an example. Repeat the question back to make a point. 1 way the Kaiser faced problems was, and then for example to give your evidence. So let's give this a go. So come up with your own point now. So pause me and finish this sentence in your revision guide or on paper. What would you say is the problem the Kaiser faced? So here's what I've gone for. So 1 way the Kaiser Wilhelm faced problems was due to the rise of socialism in his time. So the first point from my plan. Okay, so now I want to support that with some evidence. So you could have a different point. That's fine as long as you know it's the correct one. Support it with some evidence. Okay, away we go. Okay, so here's what I've done. I've said, for example, by the early 1900s, the socialists had 1/3 of the seats in the Reichstag, and they were beginning to demand better working conditions, higher wages, and better public health for the workers. So I don't necessarily need to say this caused a problem because, although I feel I want to say that, because I'm doing a describe question and not an explain question. So I don't need to have that extra sentence saying this caused a problem because that's explaining. So I should have enough detail here to get my described idea. So now we repeat the process. So have a look now and do the whole thing your own idea. You could choose empire, financial problems, difficulty of ruling, the Reichstag and the Bundesrat state. Come up with your own second idea. Right, pause me and away you go. Okay, so here's what I've come up with. I said another way the Kaiser faced problems before 1914 was because Germany did not have enough empire like other great powers. For example, Germany had only been created in 1871 and missed out on much of the empire taken in Africa. Therefore, Wilhelm wanted a Weltpolitik and naval building program to try and get more empire. Possibly, after I've written this upon reflection, I could link to something like this caused them to react heavy-handedly against Britain and cause tension with Britain for empire, the naval race, or linking something like the Morocco crisis. If you're somebody who's doing the causes of the First World War topic, you might be able to use some of that knowledge. But that should be plenty to get 3 or 4 marks. Now, the final thing to consider about this question is it's a 4-mark question. So you don't want to spend more than the amount of marks plus half for those people in normal time. So that's 6 minutes. So 1 minute thinking time, 5-minute writing time. So 3 to 4 marks is plenty to achieve here, because if you start writing too much to get that 1 extra mark, to get 4 out of 4, you are going to ruin answers elsewhere in the exam. You're going to run out of time in a bigger mark question. So just making sure you get a nice point, nice evidence repeated in there to get 3 to 4 marks. Okay, well, I hope you found that useful. If you did, then obviously I've got more tutoring videos, I've got more revision videos, I've got a full revision guide if you haven't got it already to have a look through more tutoring videos that help you get really great marks in your exams. So do have a look at the comments to find out more and do subscribe, and I hope I'll see you again soon. Bye bye for now.